Welcome back to Wednesday Night Live. It is Wednesday, April 22nd, 2015. I am your award-winning host, Ralph Lillig, and we're glad you're here. I want to tell you about our new alternate time slot. Now, we have the live production that we're doing tonight, and then it is shown again, and it will now be seen at noon Sunday. So if you didn't get to catch all of this, or if there was something, and by the way, have a pencil and paper handy, I always tell you that, but if there's something you missed that you wanted to take a note, noon on Sundays, you will see a replay of this night's broadcast. So be looking for us there. You know about, last week I shared with you about Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Boy, what a piece of work she is. She is the Democrat National Chairwoman, DNC, and she says it's okay to kill a 7 or 8 or 9 pound baby. No problem for her. And of course, most of the Democrats, there are some so-called Republicans who have no problem with so-called choice or abortion on demand, or however you want to do it. But Debbie Wasserman is a real piece of work, and she thinks it's okay to kill, a trimester, third term baby, whatever you want to call it, weighs 7 or 8 or 9 pounds. Now, moms, next time you go shopping and you pick up that roast and then you look at it and picture that 7-pound roast and picture that as an infant. That is a fully formed human being. That is a child of God. And yet the Democrat National Convention people see no problem with killing that baby. And, the Planned Parenthood is a big supporter of the Democrat National Committee, the Democrats. So keep that in mind next time you're voting. But there is an alternative. You don't have to be locked into the baby killing thing. We don't see this often because the people who are pro-life are so ill-funded. They are, like we have here in town, the Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center. And I ask you every week, please call them, send them a check, do what you can to help them, because they work off of donated money. They don't get millions of your tax dollars like the Planned Parenthood. What a sleazy misuse of the name Planned Parenthood. In other words, baby killing mills. But Compassion and Hope doesn't have that, because Compassion and Hope is a Christian organization, very small, one paid staff here in Pocatello, whose desire and job it is to help bring a healthy baby into the world, to help a mother who may be having some other problems. Maybe she had a bad relationship and has no husband or significant, husband or boyfriend or somebody. Maybe she's underage and is scared to death to tell her parents, and she needs some guidance and counseling. You can be assured that she will not be counseled or guided to kill that baby. The Compassion and Hope people will do whatever they can to help that mother and that unborn or soon-to-be-born child. So I would ask you, and I would beseech you, please call area code 208, that's for the entire state of Idaho, 478-HOPE. 478-HOPE, Compassion and Hope. And I read this to you every week, and one of these weeks I'll probably have it memorized. Compassion and Hope Pregnancy Center is a Christ-centered nonprofit ministry offering life-affirming alternatives to abortion and compassionate care to those who face pregnancy and abortion-related issues. The people at Compassion and Hope are there. They're there for the mothers and babies who need compassion and hope. And it's not that hopey-changey thing like the Obamianists are talking about. This real change, a real compassion and real hope. Once again, 478-HOPE. Call them and see how you can help them and give a young mother some hope. We start off every week with some public service announcements, and that one, as you may have guessed by now, is very dear to my heart, but we have a few others that I want to share with you. Now, this one is kind of unique, and I haven't seen this before. I'm really glad to see this coming to our area. And I'll just read the press release that was in the April 15th Idaho State Journal, ISJ, midget wrestlers to perform at Fort Hall. And this was just a staff article. Little wrestlers will be performing for a big cause Friday, May the 1st at the Shoshone-Bannock Hotel and Event Center. The Shoshone-Bannock Tribe's Recreation Department is hosting the Extreme Midget Wrestling Federation to support a new Shoshone-Bannock Wellness Center and Sports Complex on the Fort Hall Reservation. The Extreme Midget Wrestling Federation has been rated #1 by Nightclub and Bar magazine for the best alternative act in the past 3 years. Now, doors will open at 7 p.m. and the show begins at 8 p.m. Remember, this is May 1st. Ticket prices are in advance and are $18 for general seating, $22 for preferred seating. Tickets can be purchased online at Showban. I wish these people would come up with some easier to remember names, and I hope you have a pencil and paper handy. I don't think I'm going to get another. I might get one more chance. Yeah, I think we'll get one more chance to tell you about this. But here it is. It's the usual World Wide Web, www.showban.WCSC, and that probably has something to do with wrestling. And then .yapsody, YAPSODY.com at the Timby Hall Gym in Fort Hall. Or you can call 478-3770, 478-3770. The purpose of the Shoshone-Bannock Wellness Center and Sports Complex Center is to educate our communities by promoting physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual well-being through the offering of culturally relevant wellness services. And that was per tribal spokeswoman Randell Teton. For more information on the Wellness Center, call 406-2838. Talk to Angela Mendez. So that will be on May the 1st. That could be a lot of fun. I don't know, I don't know your age. I come from the generation when they used to have wrestling on television, and we all knew it was fake. That Gorgeous George and all these bizarre, almost cartoon characters, but it was a lot of fun. In fact, one of my uncles, God bless his memory, Uncle Joe, he believed it was real, and he did not miss ringside wrestling. Wrestling at ringside. It was it was a show. Wrestling is still a show, although it's become quite, I don't know, distorted, disturbed, macabre, strange. But it was a lot of fun back in the day. All right, two more things I'd like to tell you about. Now we're almost, we're only 2 weeks away from May, and the Marine Corps League is going to have its 16th annual golf scramble, May 16th, 2015. 9 o'clock shotgun start, 9 a.m. shotgun start at Highland Golf Course. Now, I've told you this every year that I announce this. I tell you, spots fill quickly, and they do. So don't waste any time getting your reservations in. Now, we have probably 40 people on average who are they return every year because they have a lot of fun. And every year we pick up a few, anywhere from 10 to 25 new people. But the spots do fill quickly, and they are limited. It's a golf scramble, so it's kind of limited. So you need to RSVP ASAP. And check-in time is 7:45 to 8:45. It's 4-person scrambles. Prizes for longest drive and closest to the pin. Prizes for first, second, third, and last. I'm not sure if we're going to do last place this year. We had some discussion about that. $60 per person. That includes your green fees and a lunch. And you can't beat that with a ticket. And then there are going to be some raffle tickets available also. And we always, every year, the Marine Corps League has a raffle for all kinds of, some are just nutty items, some are really pretty nice. And so they'll have that. Now here's who to contact. Remember I told you this is May 16th, so it's still almost a month away, 3 weeks away. But don't wait till the last minute. Get your RSVP in there right away. Call Stan Brangham, 237-3607, Stan Brangham, 237-3607, or Ron Tapia at 251-3364. Ron Tapia at 251-3364. That's the Marine Corps League of Pocatello's annual 16th annual golf scramble. And you don't want to miss that. That's always a lot of fun. I don't even golf, and I have more fun with that than most other things. The Marine Corps League also is going to have is now having as annual fund drive. Now, the veteran service organizations here in town have to raise their own money, even though they're occupied by veterans. And you have the Marine Corps League, the American League, the Veterans of Foreign War, the Non-Commissioned Officers Association. Each of them has some way that they raise money. The Non-Commissioned Officers Association sells license tags for dogs, and I'm not sure if they cover cats or not. But every year they do the licensing, and that's how they raise money for their various activities. Every veteran service organization is in existence to help veterans. Now, the Marine Corps League is specifically tasked with helping the families of Marines and Fleet Marine Force corpsmen, who are the sailors attached to the Marine Corps. So that's their task. But they also work in concert with the other VSOs. So this is the time when the Marine Corps League is having its annual fundraiser, And I'll just read right from the flyer. The Stephen D. Merrill Detachment 698 of the local Marine Corps League is announcing a special, and this is a good one, so pay attention to this. A 2-for-1 raffle for an original service-grade M1 Garand rifle. That means you could take it hunting. And 30-06 is a very, very capable hunting round, as you know. For an original service-grade M1 Garand rifle and a Rock Island 1911 .45 caliber pistol. 1 ticket, 2 drawings, and 2 chances to win. Tickets are $10 each. Now you can't beat that with a stick. The M1 Garand is sought after by collectors. You can hunt with it. It is a very capable hunting weapon. 30-06, it's a good strong round. So this is an M1 Garand rifle and a 1911 .45 caliber pistol, $10 for a ticket. And what they do is, if they draw the tickets and let's say you don't win the rifle, somebody else does, they tick your ticket and throw it back in the can, and you'll get a shot at the pistol. That's pretty good. Both drawings will be held Saturday, July 4th at a public forum. You do not need to be present to win. If a winner is not present, he or she will be contacted. Winners must be able to receive the weapons via FFL transfer. If initial winner is ineligible, another drawing will take place, and that's what I just told you about. Tickets will be available up to the time of drawing. Now, for information and tickets, talk to your local Marine Corps League member and get your tickets early. We did this, the Marine Corps League did this last year, and for a 1911 A1 .45, and those tickets went bang, they went fast. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't a 45, that was the year before. I won that one. Yeah, that was, last year was another M1 Garand. And our retired Master Guns is an avid gun guy. He's very careful on selecting these. He gets the best available. And remember, these are original weapons. These were used in the Second War or Korea. These are original weapons. He gets the very best service grade available, which means you don't really have to do anything except load it up and, grease it up, load it up, and take it to work. Contact Stan Brangham, the same fellow that you're going to contact about the golf tournament, at 237-3607, or Phil Clifton. Many of you know Phil Clifton at 241-0594, 241-0594, or Bud Smalley. Bud's very active with the POW MIA, so many of you know him, as well as being the pencil neck for the Marine Corps League this year. And Bud Smalley can be reached at 221-7783. So contact Stan Brangham, Phil Clifton, or Bud Smalley about these tickets. And as it says, funds are raised to support veterans and other appropriate community programs. Among other things, the Marine Corps League has a scholarship program and a number of things. So don't let that get away from you. We have and one other thing I almost forgot. Don't forget this Friday, the Irish Hoolie. And I've told you before, an Irish Hoolie is just a party. It's a lot of fun. And that's going to be at the Bannock County Veterans Memorial Building this Friday, the 24th, I guess it is, at, I think it's 5:30 p.m. And I'm sure they'll let you buy a ticket at the door. They've been trying to get advance reservations so they can make sure, get an idea of how many people are going to be there. But all these organizations, when they have something like that, they try to figure on maybe 10 extras or whatever. But contact the Irish Studies Organization, and you can find out about it at the university too. And the Irish Hoolie this Friday at Bannock County Veterans Memorial Building, that's going to be a ball. Pardon me. Okay, so you don't want to miss that. Now, tonight's program is not for the children, and so I'm warning you right now, you don't want to have kids in the room. Anybody under age 18, I realize that kids today learn things a lot sooner than they need to, and there are probably a lot of 14-year-olds that know things that their parents and grandparents would be shocked that they've been exposed to them. And one of these that I'm going to share with you tonight is extremely graphic. Now, we don't use vulgar language, we don't use vulgar pictures, but the very article itself, well, it speaks for itself. You don't want kids in the room for that. We're going to get to that, but I wanted to give you an advance warning on that. And again, have a pencil and paper handy. We'll probably have some information for you as we go along. A couple of things I want to catch up from the Idaho State Journal, a couple articles. This one goes back a couple of weeks to April 7th. And it's It's titled, and this was in the Idaho State Journal by Greg Eichelberger. I've just recently noticed him writing for the paper. He says, and you remember last week I was speaking to the issue of immigrants coming to this country, and Doctors Rahim, they're brothers here. They've done a lot of very good works, and they are Muslim, and Islam requires good works. This doesn't have to be of your heart, it's required. I don't say that it's not of their heart, I'm sure it is. They have done a number of honorable things. They have a foundation that they have an award that they present every year, and I have different feelings about that, but that's neither here nor there. They have this foundation that does good works, and this is money out of their pockets, and they do this presumably out of the goodness of their heart. So when I was talking about immigrants and the fact that you can't just move in, spend money, and all of a sudden be accepted, and we were talking in the context of Dr. Rahim took umbrage with a letter that was written, and I'm going to touch on that here, by someone who was talking about talking about Islam, telling the truth, but it must have struck a nerve. Now we have some apologists right here in town who will take the side of any underdog if it's perceived as an underdog, and oftentimes they'll speak up when they really don't know what it is they're talking about. However, I wanted to go back and touch on this whole thing to put it back in context, why there was a beef about it. So this is by Greg Eichelberger. The commemoration was held Monday night. Now remember, this article is from the 7th. At Ross Park to remember the victims of last week's deadly terrorist attack on a university in Kenya and to recognize the diverse elements and cultures of Idaho. The word diverse and diversity, you can always see what's coming with that. Despite the less than favorable weather earlier in the day, chilly evening temperatures, and the NCAA basketball championship game played on Monday night, several dozen people showed up at Ross Park to show their support for the cause. The event was put on by the JRM Foundation for Humanity and was led by Dr. Fahim Rahim of the Idaho Kidney Institute. The Pocatello resident is one of the foundation's leader and is a practicing Muslim. While the rally was in part focused on the 148 people, mostly Christian students, killed by Islamic terrorists on April 2nd at Kenya's Garissa University, Rahim held a similar event in Pocatello following the Islamic terrorist attack in December on a grade school in Pakistan that killed 145 people, mostly Muslim children. Rahim said at Monday night's rally, quote, "We're having this turnout to do two things: to honor those who have died and to show that the beauty of Idaho lies deeper than its mountains and rivers, that the beauty lies in her people." Idaho Republican Party Chairman Steve Yates attended Monday night's rally and said, "We represent one party tonight, the party of humanity. Democrats and Republicans will go after each other, but we stand united at this event because we truly care about the diversity of our community." An invitation had gone out to the Bonneville County Republican Central Committee to attend the rally because of a controversy which began with an article by the committee's executive director, Becky Prestwich, in the Bonneville Republican's newsletter. Her article was critical of the Muslim faith and drew criticism from Rahim, Dr. Rahim, who coincidentally supports many Republican causes. Prestwich's article stated, among other things, that the Muslim Quran advocates violence and death toward infidels. And make no mistake, if you are not a Muslim, you are an infidel. Or as they like to use within their circle, you're a kafir. And a kafir is a pejorative. It's meant to be an insult. The back and forth between Rahim and Prestwich over her article was covered in stories last week by the local as well as national media, and she apologized for her article. Prestwich told the Journal Monday, "I will not be attending the rally this evening. After seeing Christians singled out in a Kenyan college and murdered for the crime of being a different religion, Christian, I'm not in the mood to celebrate, but I wish the people who gather this evening well." Rahim said he did not hear back regarding the rally invite he extended to the Bonneville County Republican Central Committee, but that did not detract from the spirit and brotherhood of the rally. Rahim said, "I held this rally and responded to the newsletter because I'm an American and will stick up for anyone being oppressed, Christians, Muslims, Jews, Mormons, even atheists. I would do it for anyone." His brother, Naim Rahim, said the large turnout at Monday night's rally did prove that while Pocatello may be rurally located, there's still a strong connection with people here to those all over the globe. "When you see someone hurt, no matter where it is, you feel it yourself," Naim said. "We are all citizens of humanity." Rebecca Wood, a local member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, agreed, saying, The message we're trying to send is that we will not be divided. We brought our children here tonight because we want them to be accepting of all creeds and cultures, and to get rid of the barriers that separate us. Fahim is a good man, just wants to do what is right. And so that perhaps puts things a little more in context on why I was talking about, I was going into things like Irish immigration. Now, you know, a lot of Americans don't know that there's a wonderful film out by Dinesh D'Souza. The name eludes me. Is Coming to America or something like that, where he interestingly enough, he points out a little known part of American history that 99.9% of Americans don't know, and if they do, they won't talk about it. And that has to do with the first slaves in this country were Irishmen, not Africans. They were Irishmen. Generally speaking, they were indentured servants, but there were those who were also slaves. Indentured servants were treated basically as slaves, just as poorly, but they had, at least figuratively, there was an end date to their slavery at which time they would buy themselves out of servitude. Didn't always work out like that. But while they were in servitude, the Irish in this country, the first slaves in this country, were treated worse than black slaves, than African slaves. Among other things, as the country was progressing, because the value of Africans was so high. Now remember, these Africans were sold by and large, not all of them, but by and large, these African slaves were sold by Muslims into slavery. Oftentimes they were sold by their own tribe to the Muslims, or the Muslims simply took over, captured them and sold them. So it was not Americans necessarily originally bringing those people to this country. The Dutch and the British certainly brought their share of slaves to this country. Americans, to our chagrin and to our dishonor, bred, for lack of a better term, bred Africans to be slaves. And that is a stain on our history that it is not a pleasant thing to recall. But going back to what I was saying and why it was in context last week, the Irish came to this country, and now remember the first people who came to this country were mostly English and Dutch, and most of them were Protestants. When the Irish came, they came as Irishmen. They came as Catholics. The Catholics and the Protestants had no love for each other in the old country, and it was even worse here. So the Irish came in as the enemy right off the bat. I mean, even they were enslaved, but then they were also Catholics. This continued through the second wave of Irish who came during the Great Famine. And those were almost exclusively Irish Catholics coming from what later became the Republic of Ireland. And they were not welcomed with open arms. Then you had in between there, you had the German immigrants who were very industrious, Germans, Norwegians, Swedes, many of them coming in at different times. Some were accepted, some were not. They did have some closed cultures where they spoke only their native language, but they all learned to speak English too and would use it. Then you had the Italian wave that came in, and they were ill-treated, coming in the late 1800s, early 1900s. The Italians were ill-treated. Most of those coming here were almost all of them were the destitute and poor. So as the Statue of Liberty says, give me your poor, that's what we were getting from both the Irish and the Italians. So we've had wave after wave. Each immigrant family group has had to prove itself. Now in the past, they had to prove themselves by learning the language and learning the history and embracing it. And unlike our friends south of the border, mostly the Mexicans, who have refused to embrace it by and large, and they have insisted that we embrace their culture in this country where they seek work and refuge. And unlike the Muslims who have come here, by and large, not all of them, but the Muslims who have come here, most of them came to escape what's going on in their native countries. Dr. Rahim's family came from Pakistan, if I recall. Not a pleasant place to live, even if you are a person of substance. And so they come here, and I'm not speaking directly to the Rahims here, but they come to here for refuge and for a better life, and then they insist upon living their Muslim lives, their 7th century values, according to Sharia, in the country that hosts them and gives them every freedom that they can do this. Now they have to prove themselves just like everybody else. So when this lady, Miss Prestwich, said that I'm not going because I know how they are, well, she was telling the truth. The Quran does require, Islam has always, for 14th century, has been spread at the tip of the sword. Now, there are other methods that they have used. Remember this also, where we're seeing all the horrors going on in the world today in the Middle East. Iran, which was Persia, of course, in Iraq, an artificial state, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Sudan, Somalia, all of these nations that are ruled by Muslims. Well, sub-Saharan doesn't count, but Iraq, Persia, and all those countries, those were the origins of Christianity. The Christians at one time were the populace of those countries, and the Muslims at the tip of the sword, cutting off their heads, and those that they didn't cut off, they made them into dhimmis, which meant they weren't even second-class citizens, because according to the Quran, anybody who's not a Muslim is beneath the Muslims and has to be treated as if they're beneath them. So there are a lot of things that Muslims coming to this country are going to have to prove to the rest of us to be fully accepted. The Rahim brothers, to their credit, appear to be working hard to blend into the fabric. And I can only hope it's not taqiyya, that it's not the deceit and lies taught by the Quran. I'm hoping that it's true, that they truly mean this, because what they're doing, helping in Nepal and other places, they're good works. They're doing good things. And good works, some religions require you to do good works. Some religions say that you should because you've been saved through Christ, and you should. So I don't want anybody to misinterpret what I'm saying and say that I'm to try to interpret it as bum rapping and Doctors Rahim, rather, far from it. But if anybody's going to come to this country as an immigrant, and they're not even first generation, and they have thin skin, they need to thicken the hide a little bit and learn that you don't just dance in and get to be somebody. You have to prove it, as they are apparently attempting to do. All right, let's move on from that. So that puts that in context. Now, this was April the 9th, very brief, in the Idaho State Journal. Most of what I take here is from the Journal. A response to Mark Nye's column. Remember, Mark Nye is one of our state representatives, and interestingly enough, Mark Nye is a Democrat, 29th District Democrat. He votes more conservatively than Kelly Packer, 28th District Republican. In fact, he votes almost twice as conservatively. Now, he's still in the negatives. He's still in the red zone. And we've got a chart here that is put out by the Idaho Freedom Foundation, and it's the 2015 Index on Voting. And it says positive numbers indicate a pro-free market and freedom-oriented wording record. Negative numbers indicate the opposite. And you'll find that Elaine Smith, Democrat from 29, Kelly Packer, Republican, alleged, from 28, Mark Nye from District 29, all of them voted in the red. They are Democrats. And Kelly Packer votes worse than the Democrat Mark Nye. And then Ken Andrus is in the green, just right close to the bottom, second from the bottom. But his freedom indexes, he votes 53% of the time, he votes the right way, according to conservative principles. Jim Guthrie, disappointment. Roy Lacey, Democrat, disappointment. All right, so there was an article. So Mark Nye gave his observations about the legislative session that ended. I guess it ended on the 7th. And this letter says, I read with fascination Mark Nye's observations of the legislative session. I tried to find his humor. He thinks Idaho is not spending enough, and it's disgraceful that we have the 49th lowest taxes in the nation. He doesn't like it. We have the lowest violent crime rate in the West, yet our prisons are full. Duh. Maybe we put the violent criminals in prison instead of back on the street. But I'm not a lawyer. He states non-lawyers cannot read the law, but they still vote. They should all support more investments, read taxes. What really got me was when he referred to someone who claimed constitutional freedom of speech when that was not in the original Constitution. That's what Mark Nye said. He failed to mention that the Bill of Rights became part of our Constitution in 1791. But I'm not a lawyer. He said about 3 members walked out during a Hindu prayer. In lawyers speak, does that mean 2.5? Maybe Mark Nye is doing a good job in the legislature. Well, I would dispute that. But his attitude is ample display of why lawyers are held in such low esteem by the general public. But what do I know? I'm not a lawyer. And that's by Carl Heggie of Aberdeen. Well done, Carl. Well done. Now, you remember last week when I showed you, I spoke a little bit about Dirty Harry Reid. Dirty Harry, I love that. That just covers him perfectly. I showed you a photo. It was a booking photo, and I told you I didn't think it was photoshopped, but I didn't have all the details on it. Well, I have them now. And here he is, good old Dirty Harry. There's the same mugshot as before, and he does not look happy. This occurred in 2012. Las Vegas, Las Vegas. Harry Mason Reid, cowboy poet who is known to his fans as the Senate Majority Leader, was lying in the middle of the road with no car in sight when another driver spotted him and called 911, according to a recording released Thursday. Officials said Reid was naked and threatened to kill state troopers when he was arrested late Tuesday night. Now, this was 2012, August of 2012. Apparently, Reid was returning home from a poetry reading at the Cowboy Poets Association. He was charged with driving while intoxicated and retaliation or obstruction, and released Wednesday on a $21,500 bond from the Clark County Jail in Las Vegas. A mugshot showed a battered-looking Reid, and he's pretty beat up, in a T-shirt with a black eye and dried blood on his face. He later walked barefoot out of the county jail wearing scrubs and a Viva Las Vegas baseball cap. This guy was the Senate Majority Leader for how many years? That's just astonishing. The 911 caller did not identify Reid by name and said he at first thought the body belonged to a deer. "I'm spooked out," he said. "I don't see a vehicle. There's a couple of cones scattered." Nevada troopers responding to the scene said a Pontiac Trans Am registered to the 71-year-old at that time, Reid, had been driven off the road and struck several barricades in a construction road. Reid was not wearing clothes and made threats against the Nevada troopers, said a Department of Public Safety spokesman. He said the trooper refused sobriety tests, so a blood specimen was taken. Reid had a strong odor of alcoholic beverage on his breath and several signs of intoxication, according to a statement from the sheriff's office. While Reid was being transported, he made threats to shoot and rape the troopers working the case. District Attorney said the felony retaliation or obstruction charge could be referred to a grand jury within a month or six weeks, while the DWI case could be filed as soon as the prosecutors decided whether to proceed. The felony count carries a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison and or a fine of up to $10,000. Well, he never went to prison, so I guess he paid the fine. It's been a rocky couple of years for Reid, a Las Vegas native best known for such tunes as "The War is Lost," "Romney Pays No Taxes," and other tunes popular among Democrat voters. Friends cite increasing stress and anxiety over losing Senate majority role in the coming election, remember this is 2012, as a likely reason for this breakdown. A representative for U.S. Senate said there would be no comment Thursday. So there is the former leader of the Senate, Dirty Harry, in all his glory, booked for DWI and threatening to beat up and rape the troopers who did it. Remember the Black Panthers? That goes back a ways, but the Black Panthers were very active. They still are active, but they've become far more mainstream political, and they're really not, but they're still radical, but they have become not quite as radical as they were back in the 60s and 70s. Well, back in 1969, a group of Black Panthers decided that a fellow Black Panther named Alex Rackley needed to die. Rackley was suspected of disloyalty. Rackley was first tied to a chair. Once safely immobilized, his friends tortured him for hours by, among other things, pouring boiling water on him. When they got tired of torturing Rackley, Black Panther member Warren Kimbrough took Rackley outside and put a bullet in his head. Rackley's body was later found floating in a river about 25 miles north of New Haven, Connecticut. Perhaps at this point you're curious as to what happened to these Black Panthers. Now this is 2015, we're talking about 1969. In 1977, that's only 8 years later, only one of the killers was still in jail. The shooter, Warren Kimbrough, managed to get a scholarship to Harvard and became good friends with none other than Al Gore. He later became an assistant dean at an Eastern Connecticut State College. Isn't that something? As a 60s radical, you can pump a bullet into someone's head, and a few years later in the same state, you can become an assistant college dean. Only in America. Erica Huggins was the woman who served the Panthers by boiling the water for Mr. Rackley's torture. Some years later, Ms. Huggins was elected to California School Board. How in the world do you think these killers got off so easily? Maybe it was in part, some part, due to the efforts of two people who came to the defense of the Panthers. These two people actually went so far as to shut down Yale University with demonstrations in defense of the accused Black Panthers during their trial. One of these people was none other than Bill Lan Lee. Mr. Lee, or Mr. Lan Lee, as the case may be, isn't a college dean. He isn't a member of a California school board. He is now head of the United States Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, appointed by none other than Bill Clinton. Now, I think since this writing, I think Lan Lee was shown the door. I'm not positive, but I believe he was. Appointed by old Billy Boy, Bill Clinton. Okay, so who was the Panther defender? Is this other notable Panther defender now a school board member? Is this other Panther apologist now an assistant college dean? No, neither. The other Panther defender was, like Lee, a radical law student at Yale University at the time. She is now known as the smartest woman in the world. She is none other than the former Democrat senator from the state of New York, our former First Lady and the Secretary of State, the incredible Hillary Rodham Clinton. And now, as Paul Harvey says, you know the rest of the story. Hillary Rodham Clinton, smartest woman in the world, certainly one of the wealthiest in the world. And if you've been following this on television, it's laughable. She's all for the middle class guy. She's all for the little guy, millionaire through guile, theft, whatever you want to call her way of doing politics. Her and Billy, they have managed to go from now Billy was nobody. His family was nothing to talk about. So in a way, in a very distorted way, you have to admire him. She came from a good family. They both had good educations for different reasons. And old Billy, he just slip and slide, just keep on keeping on. But Hillary, well, let's talk a little bit about good old Hillary. Remember a couple of weeks ago I told you about this article from the Hayride by, who was that by? Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. But in this particular article, we were told that the Democrats, the people that are working for Hillary, warned the press about using certain words in describing Hillary. They're not going to take any baloney from you this time, because they all know that you're a part of the vast right-wing conspiracy. Yeah, right. All right, now, so these are some of the words. You're not allowed to use these. Be careful. You cannot use polarizing about her. You cannot use calculating. You cannot use disingenuous. You cannot use insincere. You ever watch her eyes? This is a mad woman. She has a habit, if she looks at people, which she doesn't like to do that. She looks away, she'll look over them, she'll look at their middle. She doesn't like to look in their eyes. And remember, I believe this, and perhaps you do too. The eyes are the window to the soul, and this woman has no soul. She sold this to the devil, I believe, a long time ago. And when she does look somebody in the eye, she does this wide-eyed thing that makes her look mad. I mean, she looks like a nut job. Well, she looks like a pear with nut job eyes. But I digress. Can't call her ambitious, although certainly, anybody who can get $300,000 for speaking for 30 minutes, I'd say that's a pretty ambitious person. And isn't it interesting? I read someplace recently where whenever she goes to a speaking event, whoever is having her to speak must provide a private jet, and it has to be a jet that seats no fewer than 16. She has to have a hotel room. She usually takes the presidential suite in the best hotels in town. She has her own little entourage. And this all has to be footed as well as whatever the fee is to listen to her brilliance as she speaks to the masses, the Democrat masses. Oh, okay, other words you cannot use is inevitable, because there's been this thing about she's the inevitable candidate of the Democrats. They're going to engineer what they're going to engineer. Entitled, she certainly believes she's entitled. Overconfident. Yeah, she is. I don't know if she's overconfident, because she certainly believes in herself. Secretive. You think? A woman who had her own servers as Secretary of State that the government can't even get their hands on to do her email business? Is that secretive? Yeah. Will do anything to win, and she will do anything to win. Represents the past. She does that. Unfortunately, she speaks in the present, but she represents the out of touch. Yeah, I love that when she went to the Chipotle restaurant with her sunglasses. She was in disguise. You wouldn't know her, and ordered just common folk food like everybody else, while trailing around in the Scooby van. How ridiculous does it get? Out of touch and tone deaf, and she is that. Well, now let's talk a little bit about Friends of Bill, F-O-B, or Friends of Hillary, F-O-H. This is posted by Rumor Mail on 3rd of March of 2014. So this is not new. It's been around for a little while. And on this list, of course, they left out Benghazi, but this is food for thought. And there's just a quick refresher course lest we forget what has happened to many friends of the vile Clintons. James McDougal, Clinton's convicted Whitewater partner, died of an apparent heart attack while in solitary confinement. He was a key witness in Ken Starr's investigation. Mary Mahoney, a former White House intern, was murdered July 1997 at a Starbucks coffee shop in Georgetown. The murder happened just after she was to go public with her story of sexual harassment in the White House. And remember, it was Hillary's job to totally destroy these women that kept coming out of the woodwork as having affairs with Billy Boy. And boy, she did. Vince Foster, this one is one that really sticks in the mind of a lot of us. Former White House counselor and colleague of Hillary Clinton at Little Rock's Rose Law Firm, died of a gunshot wound to the head, ruled a suicide. Remember, he was found in the public park right by the White House, posed, perfectly posed, no signs of anything around him, and suicide. Ron Brown, Secretary of Commerce and former DNC chairman, reported to have died by impact in a plane crash. A pathologist close to the investigation reported that there was a hole in the top of Brown's skull resembling a gunshot wound. At the time of his death, Brown was being investigated and spoke publicly of his willingness to cut a deal with prosecutors. The rest of the people on the plane also died. A few days later, the air traffic controller committed suicide. How convenient. C. Victor Razor II. Razor, a major player in the Clinton fundraising organization, died in a private plane crash, July 1992. Paul Tully, Democrat National Committee political director, found dead in a hotel room in Little Rock, September 1992, described by Clinton as a dear friend and trusted advisor. Ed Willey, Clinton fundraiser, found dead November 1993, deep in the woods in Virginia of a gunshot wound to the head, ruled a suicide. Ed Willey died on the same day his wife Kathleen Willey claimed Bill Clinton groped her in the Oval Office in the White House. Ed Willey was involved in several Clinton fundraising events. And I can go on. There are pages of all of these people who met untimely demise, and they were all friends of Bill, not the Bill from AA. Well, a quick departure from Friends of Bill. This was from the Idaho State Journal again, April the 12th. Your letter section. Mayor Blatt a lot like President Obama. This is to the editor. Pardon me. I read with a degree of dismay and a great deal of frustration the article in Thursday's Idaho State Journal about the city of Pocatello and Mayor Blatt being investigated by the Idaho Attorney General. I appreciate the Idaho State Journal covering this story. It is an important news story, and I wish our local TV stations were paying more attention to the possible corruption and misuse of taxpayer funds in Pocatello's city government. I am an independent-minded voter. However, I don't like President Obama. Our current president is fond of issuing executive orders which create mandates that circumvent Congress. The president abuses his power and office. Mayor Blatt also likes to issue executive orders, it seems, which allow taxpayer money to be spent without city council approval. Both Obama and Blatt are wrong. Good government requires oversight by elected representatives. Congress provides oversight for the president. The Pocatello City Council provides oversight for the mayor. Like Obama, Mayor Blatt was seemingly overstepped his authority. I hope the Attorney General's investigation is a quick one and more detailed in the 7-page audit the city of Pocatello paid thousands of dollars for. If the investigation finds the mayor broke the law, the voters should recall him. Pocatello does not need elected officials who break the law. That was by Kayla T. Prestman here in Pocatello. You know, we do have a diverse community here. We have a great deal of diversity in the way people view things. One of the things that you would be, if you were from another city or another state, another country, you might be very surprised to learn what an active LGBTQ community we have here. In spite of its relatively small size, you would think we were in San Francisco, considering the gravitas that they were given a couple of years ago during the inundation of our local body politic by people from all over the country, basically. And as you recall, last year, the final tally on the petition for referendum on the so-called non-discrimination ordinance finally narrowed down to 56 votes difference to keep the referendum, keep the non-discrimination law, after the LGBTQ lobby, calling themselves Fair Pocatello, spent $156,000 to make sure that they got their non-discrimination ordinance in place. Now, I haven't seen any evidence of anything happening yet where that law has been tested, but it is in place. $156,000 to garner 56 votes, basically. Well, it's interesting to see who backs those kinds of things. Now, the UUs here in town are very well known for that. The pastor for the Methodist Church here in town is the leader, whatever, director for the, I call them the Great for Hate people, the so-called too great for hate people, who are anything that has to do with LGBTQ, they're Johnny on the spot to support it. And I thought this was interesting because, you know, we just had Passover just a couple of weeks ago. We had Passover, and we had Easter, the Jewish Passover, and the risen Christ, the Easter thing. And yet, while the Orthodox world was celebrating either the Passover or the resurrected Christ, Trinity Episcopal Church was presenting a final installment of the spring LGBTQ education series. And I found this interesting because they had, on Wednesday, the movie Anyone and Everyone was to be shown in the parish hall at 355 Westlander in Pocatello. Dr. Jane Coe-Smith from Idaho State University Department of Counseling facilitated the discussion. The movie's, it goes on about this whole thing. And the idea here, the thrust of it is, as I said before, while everybody else in Orthodox Christianity and the Jews in Judaism were looking toward different things, Trinity Episcopal Church, their major theme was not talking about the risen Christ, even though they're supposedly an Orthodox church, but it was their LGBTQ agenda. I just found that very interesting. And about the same time, let's see, that was on the 13th, okay, April the 13th. Now, April, is that correct? Yeah, April 13th. Okay, that's when that came out. Back on March 14th, there was an interesting thing here again in the Idaho State Journal. Anticipating the Freedom to Marry service set. The theme of the Pocatello Unitarian Universalist Fellowship Worship Service Sunday will be Anticipating the Freedom to Marry, led by the Reverend Duffy Pete. And many people are anticipating how the U.S. Supreme Court will rule on the issue of same-sex marriage later this year. The recent law changes have been made possible because people and institutions such as the Unitarian Universalist Association have been willing to stand on the side of love. Uriel Roberts will coordinate the service. Diane Harding will lead children's religious exploration. I shudder to think what that is. A potluck dinner. Offerings will go to the Gay Straight Student Alliance Clubs of Pocatello and Highland High Schools. And I thought that was interesting. Uriel Roberts is a very prominent Democrat in the community, and I'm assuming she's a member of the UUs. Now, you may not know, as I did not know, have you ever heard the word cisgender, C-I-S gender? I was not familiar. I heard the word maybe a month ago. It didn't mean a thing to me. Well, you know, it's interesting. The LGBT, the lesbians, gays, bisexual, transgender, queer, LGBTQ, have their own language. And a lot of it is a mystery to those of us who are just old, straight, white males, I guess. But this cisgender is relatively new to me. So, excuse me, but it's becoming more and more used. And basically, it's a derogatory remark to straight white males. I guess straight white anybody, straight anybody. Cisgender, interesting. So, pardon me, in order to obtain a definition of the word cisgender, one must go to the wonderful world of the Urban Dictionary. Why? Because cisgender is a newly invented word and not yet found in any real dictionary. All right, number one definition. Definition for cisgender. A derogatory term used by members of the trans community, transgender, to refer to all the disgusting people in this world who don't hate their genitalia. I don't make it up, folks. It's in the, you go to online. And what'd you expect from hetero gender stuff like that? Okay, and that was by, oh, I'm not even going to use this word. This guy identifies himself with some very typical for the LGBTQ community filthy language, and that's his self-identification. Definition number 2 for cisgender, actual gender. The rejection of the belief that your gender can change by merely thinking that you're a different gender. A cisgender male is a male. A cisgender female is a female. And that was by Salman Rushdie. Interesting. Wouldn't have known that. Okay, so here again, we're going to change horses really quickly, and I love this. I hope you like this. Florida court sets atheist holy day. Didn't know they had a holy day for atheists, huh? In Florida, an atheist created a case against Easter and Passover holidays, or holy days. He hired an attorney to bring a discrimination against a case against Christians and Jews and observances of the holy days. The argument was that it was unfair that atheists had no such recognized days. The case was brought before a judge. After listening to the passionate presentation by the lawyer, the judge banged his gavel, declaring, "Case dismissed." The lawyer immediately stood and objecting to the rule, saying, "Your Honor, how can you possibly dismiss this case? The Christians have Christmas, Easter, and others. The Jews have Passover, Yom Kippur, Hanukkah, yet my client and all other atheists have no such holidays." The judge leaned forward in his chair, saying, "But you do. Your client, counselor, is woefully ignorant." The lawyer said, "Your Honor, we are unaware of any special observance or holiday for atheists." The judge said, "The calendar says April 1st is April Fool's Day. Psalm 14:1 states, 'The fool says in his heart there is no God.' Thus it is the opinion of this court that if your client says there is no God, then he is a fool. Therefore, April 1st is his day. Court is adjourned." You gotta love a judge who knows the scriptures. So April 1st, we now know, is Atheist Day. All right. This is kind of an alarming thing here. I don't know if you've seen this. This just came out on April 14th, so that's only a week ago. ISIS camp a few miles from Texas. Mexican authorities confirm. ISIS is operating a camp just a few miles from El Paso, Texas, according to Judicial Watch. Sources that include a Mexican Army field-grade officer and a Mexican federal police officer or inspector. The exact location where the terrorist group has established its base is around 8 miles from the U.S. border in an area known as Anapra, situated just west of Ciudad Juarez in the Mexican state of Chihuahua. Another ISIS cell to the west of Ciudad Juarez in Puerto Palomas targets the New Mexican towns of Columbus and Deming for easy access to the United States. The same knowledgeable sources confirm. And if you don't know, Columbus and Deming are very close to the border. During the course of a joint operation last week, Mexican Army and federal law enforcement officials discovered documents in Arabic and Urdu, as well as plans of Fort Bliss, the sprawling military installation that houses the U.S. Army's 1st Armored Division. Muslim prayer rugs were recovered with the documents during the operation. Law enforcement and intelligence sources reported the area around Anapra is dominated by the Vicente Carrillo Fuentes cartel, Juarez cartel, La Leña, the enforcement arm of the cartel, and the Barrio Azteca, a gang originally formed in the jails of El Paso. Cartel control of the Anapra area make it an extremely dangerous and hostile operating environment for the Mexican Army and federal police operations. According to these same sources, coyotes engaged in human smuggling and working for Juarez cartel helped move ISIS terrorists through the desert and across the border between Santa Teresa and Sunland Park, New Mexico. To the east of El Paso and Ciudad Juarez, cartel-backed coyotes are also smuggling ISIS terrorists through the porous border between Alcala and Fort Hancock, Texas. These specific areas were targeted for exploitation by ISIS because of their understaffed municipal and county police forces and the relative safe havens the areas provide for the unchecked large-scale drug smuggling that was already ongoing. Mexican intelligence sources report that ISIS intends to exploit the railways and airport facilities in the vicinity of Santa Teresa, New Mexico, a U.S. port of entry. The sources also say that ISIS has spotters located in the East Potrillo Mountains of New Mexico, largely managed by the Bureau of Land Management, to assist with terrorist border crossing operations. ISIS is conducting reconnaissance of regional universities, the White Sand Missile Range, government facilities in Alamogordo, New Mexico, Fort Bliss, and the electrical power facilities near Napra and Chaparral, New Mexico. So there you have it. And our Obamunist, the commander-in-chief, doesn't like us being on the border. Now, speaking about the Obamunist, this is a quote. I would say this is the quote of the century. Quote, "The danger to America is not Barack Obama, but a citizenry capable of entrusting a man like him with the presidency. It will be far easier to limit and undo the follies of an Obama presidency than to restore the necessary common sense and good judgment to a depraved electorate willing to have such a man for their president. The problem is much deeper and far more serious than Mr. Obama, who is a mere symptom of what ails America. Blaming the prince of the fools should not blind anyone to the vast confederacy of fools that made him their prince. The republic can survive a Barack Obama, who is, after all, merely a fool. It is less likely to survive a multitude of fools such as those who made him their president." I've never heard it so well done. That was Václav Klaus, former president of the Czech Republic. Well, we're starting to wind down on time, so we're going to have to pretty much close it here. See, I have one brief one here I can read. This is also an Idaho State Journal titled "Sexual Orientation" from April 12th. We often hear about studies that show sexual orientation is genetically determined, but few have actually read these studies. Why? I will tell you. These studies do not exist. Oh yes, there are claims and assertions in plenty, but these assertions are seldom made by scientists in their own field of competence. Well, we're running out of time, so I'll finish this one next week. In the meantime, I really appreciate your tuning in. Remember to tune in at 5 o'clock Sunday to see Aaron Hayes with his program, and at noon Sunday to see a replay of this program or to have someone you know see it. In the meantime, God bless you and yours. Have a good, safe weekend. It's just right around the corner. And hopefully we will see you again same time next week. In the meantime, as I said, God bless you and yours. Good night.